Have a break, have a KitKat. After a long day of working, studying, and taking care of my 3 little brothers, this is what I sought after. I went to my secret stash of candy, hidden behind my stack of books and jigsaw puzzles. And there it was, the break that I needed on that day. A fun-sized KitKat. However, upon biting into this KitKat, there was no break. The wafer had been missing. In total shock, I set the KitKat on my copy of Jane Eyre and analyzed it for a few minutes. After my analysis, I realized that this waferless KitKat represented the pressing immigration issues in America. It represented what an America with no immigrants is like. With no wafer, a KitKat is simply a plain chocolate bar. And with no immigrants, America is simply a piece of land. America was built and founded by early immigrants. The Pilgrims themselves were foreign-born people who came to this country seeking the slightest bit of potential for a better life. They were immigrants. Unless you are a Native American or a descendant of slaves, then you are a descendant of immigrants. Or maybe you're an immigrant yourself. So why are we, as a country, as a society, and as a government, so reluctant to deliver new immigrants the same opportunities that we, the descendants of immigrants, have been granted? I want you to ponder on this question for the remainder of the speech. Throughout the speech, I will go through the many ways that immigrants help America, and then I will go through the ways that we can help immigrants. Immigrants help fuel economic prosperity ever since they've been coming to America. In the late 1800s, Chinese immigrants worked tirelessly on the Transcontinental Railroad, one of the most impactful components of transportation during the early development of America's economic future. Their hard work enabled economic stability for years to come in America. In these years to follow, immigrants continued to work tirelessly in fields that are essential for growth, like construction, manufacturing, and farming. Their hard work enabled Americans to be fed, have sound infrastructure, and have quality goods at low cost. Immigrants are also great entrepreneurs, as they launch companies twice as much as native-born people, thus feeding into economic prosperity even more. Let's come back to this KitKat again. Let's say that the KitKat all of a sudden halted production of the wafer and only sold waferless bars. Their sales would surely fall. In a similar way, if America stopped welcoming new immigrants, then our economic system would surely crumble. Immigrants also bring diversity and culture to America, which is significant if one wants to seek a deeper level of understanding of others. What some might call American culture thrives greatly on the diversity of foreign culture. America is a melting pot of cultures. How many of you experienced something from another culture? Did you have a meal from another culture, like tacos, pasta, or curry? Did you interact with someone from another culture? Maybe even listen to music from another culture? None of these experiences would have been possible without the cultural value that immigrants bring to this country. Being able to better understand one's culture allows us to better understand the struggles that some might have gone through. This develops a mind and a society that is well-versed and compassionate for others. Let's come back to this KitKat again. The key components to a KitKat are the chocolate and the wafer. They complement each other perfectly. The clashes of cultures in America complement each other perfectly. They create a society that is well-versed and compassionate for others. Immigrants also have significant contributions to science and technology in America. Inventions such as the telephone, blue jeans, and even video games were all invented by immigrants. Even Google was invented by Sergey Brin, a Russian immigrant. How many of you Googled things like things to do in Louisville or places to go eat on this trip? Because if it wasn't for immigrants, you might not have been able to do so. Apart from inventions, immigrants also have significant representation in the STEM field. According to PBS, 1 in every 6 healthcare workers is an immigrant. 30% of physicians are immigrants. 20% of engineers are immigrants. And 23% of STEM workers overall are immigrants. Immigrant involvement in the STEM field should not go unnoticed. Their significant representation is needed for the further technological advancement of this country. Let's come back to this KitKat again. Let's say that the KitKat started off as a waferless bar, but the company introduced the wafer to be an innovative force in the industry. The wafer is to the KitKat as immigrants are to America. Immigrants are the innovative force that makes America thrive when it comes to STEM. Now that I've been over many of the reasons as to how immigrants help America, how can we help them? The most direct way to help immigrants is by supporting policy that supports them. Currently, there's not a very organized way to enter the country legally, which has left millions stranded at the border seeking the slightest bit of potential for a visa. There are also severely unrealistic caps on the amount of people that can receive visas and seek humanitarian asylum in the US. This significant lack of organization is largely a fault to the US government and those whom we have put into power. So as US citizens, I urge each and every one of you that could vote to support policy and politicians that advocate for well-rounded immigration policy. We can also support immigrants directly in our community by supporting their businesses and by simply being kind. You see, when I had this waferless KitKat, I had to call the company just to ensure that everything was going good on their end and to ensure that nobody else would have to go through the same pain that I had gone through when I bit into that waferless bar. We must do the same for immigration policy. We know there's a problem, and it's up to us to remind our elected officials of it. I want to come back to this question of why we are so reluctant to welcome new immigrants when most of us are the descendants of immigrants ourselves. It begs the question of whether or not it is racial bias or fear of change that prohibits our minds from wanting to accept new immigrants. For me, the answer to this question comes easy. I am the descendant of Iraqi immigrants who came to this country seeking the slightest bit of potential for a better life. I know exactly what my Iraqi family has brought to America, but more importantly, what America has given us. My very presence at this tournament would not have been possible if it wasn't for immigration. So I ask you this, if anything, what is keeping you from wanting to accept new immigrants into this country? I want to come back to this KitKat one final time. With no wafer, a KitKat is overly dense and does not do much for your cravings. Trust me, I know. Without immigrants, America would suffer economically, culturally, and technologically. It would be incomplete. So push your elected officials to advocate for well-rounded immigration policy, as it will significantly benefit the state of this broken country. Thank you.